Monster Train is a new deck-building roguelike from independent developer Shiny Shoe. It's available now on Steam and has had an overwhelmingly positive reception. Shiny Shoe have a quirky mix of projects under their belt as developers. They've collaborated with Stoic to create the Banner Saga series, and have worked with acclaimed developers Double Fine to remaster many 90s adventure games including Day of the Tentacle and Grim Fandango. This is their first foray into the deck-building genre. The story goes hell has frozen over. You play as the monsters, desperate to reignite the inferno at the centre of hell. Luckily for you, hell happens to have a sophisticated rail infrastructure, allowing you to transport the final burning pyre from limbo through the seven circles and into the frozen heart. Unluckily for you, the forces of heaven interpose at every station to halt your advance. The story is simple and silly, serving primarily as art direction. It frames the experience well, letting you get into the gameplay quickly. I'll expose the elephant in the room early. There is no question that Monster Train is inspired by the gameplay of Slay the Spire, an incredibly well-received title created by Megacrit Games, released in January last year. I don't think Shiny Shoe iterating on Slay the Spire's success is a bad thing, although I'll compare the game features more than I would a completely original IP. Monster Train is a great mix of new, evolved gameplay concepts and borrowed, tried and true formula. So how does gameplay work? Gameplay is broken up into runs, and each run has three main phases: deck selection, the rail map, and train combat. A single run will last up to an hour, depending on how calculated you play and how many train combats you survive. Being a roguelike, death is permanent. Failing a train combat will end your run, although you'll unlock more features for future runs based on your successes. Unlocking new features, especially new powerful cards, is addicting and will keep you coming back to complete your sets. I'll try not to spoil too much because the mystery of what card you'll unlock next is part of the fun. Deck selection is where you choose which deck of cards to use on a run. Card decks are called clans and all have specific themes and unique mechanics similar to colours in Magic the Gathering. You start off with 2 clans and you can unlock an additional 3 through in-game achievements. A clan like the Awoken is full of spiky units and healing spells, whereas the Stygian Guard has much more powerful direct damage magic, but lack the tanky units. The unlockable clans tend to have more complicated synergies and some genuinely great mechanics that fit the art of the deck. My first run with the Umbra, the original residents of Hell, was a refreshing change of pace with their cannibalistic mechanics. On your first run, you'll choose a primary and allied clan and have no idea what that means, what cards they contain, or what those cards even do. The main perk of picking a primary clan is that you get the champion card of that clan. It summons an incredibly powerful unit that you can build a whole deck around. Being forced to choose an allied clan adds more complexity and friction to your deck. You can't simply double down on the synergy of a single clan. You can also select a Covenant level, which adds a difficulty modifier to your run. There are 25 levels and their modifiers are additive. This feature, imported nearly identically from Slay the Spire, adds an incredible amount of replayability to the game. It works two ways. It pressures experienced players to test the limits of their skills, but also allows new players a gentler first time. Veterans don't get bored, and inexperienced players don't get put off. Win-win. Once you've selected a deck, you'll arrive on the rail map. The board is broken up into zones called Circles of Hell. Each zone has its own art style, with the Bogworm's Remains being a particularly cool design. Functionally, they're identical, all have 2 routes, left or right, and all conclude with a train combat. Randomised vendors along the way allow you to add, remove, or upgrade your cards for cash. Select vendors also sell artifacts, which provide global effects. There are also random events, free pickups, and set points to upgrade your champion unit. It's a shame the zones don't offer any of their own specific items, cards, or events, especially since they're artistically so unique. It seems like a missed opportunity you don't get mushrooms from the forest zones, or ice from the tundra, for example. Much like Slay the Spire's dungeon map, Monster Train's rail map is entirely visible all the way up to the ultimate battle. Experienced players can look ahead and make more strategic decisions based on future pickups. The rail map has less pathway choices and fewer random events than the Slay the Spire version. I think this is an attempt by Shiny Shoe to reduce the time players spend on the strategy map layer and focus more time in combat. A side effect of this trim down is that decisions matter more on the rail map because there are fewer decisions to make. You're also more vulnerable to the RNG gods. If a vendor isn't selling the right item for your deck at the right time, you might be doomed from the start. The train combat sections are the most innovative development Monster Train makes to the single player deck building formula. Before each train combat, you'll be told what part of the angelic army will be invading your train, and which named angel will lead their troops to battle. Each unit has health and attack values and specific abilities. You can also opt in for a random floor challenge, providing better rewards if you're victorious. Opting in is a clever idea if you think your deck has a favourable matchup against the challenge. Your train has 3 normal floors and the pyre at the top. The action is turn-based, and every turn a new wave of angelic invaders board your train. You can spend mana to summon monsters and cast spells to counter the angelic horde. When you end your turn, combat resolves with the angels acting first. Any surviving angels move up a floor of the train. Once they reach the top, they'll battle the pyre itself. If your pyre dies, the whole run ends. All enemy actions are telegraphed, and there is no randomness to their attacks, so combat feels more like a puzzle than a risk management simulator. The multiple floors add a lot of dynamics. Sometimes it's better to ignore units on lower floors to build up a stronger, united defense up top. Other times a unit has an ability that makes them a priority to eliminate early, like the squishy Absolver support unit that sneaks self-damaging cards into your deck. It's really engaging, and you feel like a smarty pants when you set things up exactly right. On the other hand, the end turn shuffle can really surprise you if you miscalculate something. The tension builds up if you ever fall behind and your train starts to fill up with angels. Finally, after X waves, you fight the encounter boss. The minor boss fights work much the same as the standard fighting, except that combat cycles on that floor until either you or the boss has died. If you defeat the boss, you get a bunch of money and card packs to improve your deck. Every run has 3 major bosses: Daedalus, Fel, and the final boss, Seraph. They are much the same as the minor bosses, except they support random floors with spells during the standard waves. Bosses have random modifiers every run. Seraph the Chaste will debuff your units, while Seraph the Diligent will consume your spells. These modifiers are a quick, effective way for Shiny Shoe to extend their content. They increase the replayability of the experience, but they're not as good as just having a larger pool of bosses to pick from. Monster Train is a snowball game. Its card decks are designed in such a way as to encourage a level of synergy that creates near endless combos and multiplying bonuses like a snowball picking up speed and size down a hill. If you get that perfect combination of upgrades and synergies, you tear through enemies like paper. This cathartic ravaging is common in modern single-player card games. Because there's no human opponent, it doesn't matter if the human player occasionally breaks the game and goes berserk. Monster Train feels like it knows this a little too well, however. I don't feel as clever for breaking the game when I feel like it's expected. The power level of enemy angels grow at a blistering pace. It further confirms that the game knows you're going to snowball. Instead of feeling powerful, I tend to just feel impotent the times my combos don't line up and I'm hitting a 1300 health Archangel for 8 damage a turn. Balance at the moment is a bit skiffy. Those opt-in modifiers and boss modifiers really change the strength of the invading angels. This makes balance really hard, as sometimes your deck will be great against a particular modifier, and sometimes it will absolutely crush you. Magic shields cripple my Stygian Guard deck who rely heavily on spells, but my merely focused Hellhorned aren't affected at all. If you get bad modifiers, you miss bonuses and you can get caught behind your power curve. It can feel impossible to catch up. Certain rail map events seem to be tremendously more powerful than others. Unstable Vortex removes cards, greatly increasing the reliability of your deck. Hellvent, which duplicates a card, feels weak early on, but game-changing later on if you get a free copy of your super rare, fully upgraded Mega card. I'd be excited to see some balance changes in a future patch to address some of the more obvious outliers. Clans feel balanced, but it feels like you need to unlock the cards to get going. The power of the clans tend to grow as more cards become unlocked and more extreme synergies are revealed. Of course, more cards in your clan means you're less likely to stumble upon that perfect combo, so going berserk becomes a little less frequent. Certain clans, like Stygian Guard, feel like they need a more complete deck to be powerful, so you will probably start them as an allied clan until you fill them out. The art direction is comic and chunky, almost as a counterpoint to the gravitas of the setting. It's visually reminiscent of Blizzard titles like Hearthstone or the Warcraft franchise. It's also got a sprinkle of Snowpiercer thematically. There is a polish to the card and interface design that feels like a AAA title. There is some palette swapping, and some cards are extensions of base models, but you really don't notice it during gameplay. The combat feels impactful, and the sound design backs up the punch. It's presented in a series of idle and action frames, Darkest Dungeon style. It's effective for the design cost. The angels look great. The Daedalus boss is a highlight with an intricate and unusual design. One quirk of angels being an invading force is that they have no relationship to the circle of hell that you meet them on. This gives freedom to their design, but there is no sense of a relationship to space. The reignition of the pyre is also a little small. I was expecting a Dragon Ball Z style explosion of hellfire. I have to wonder whether they simply ran out of time or money to realise the vision they wanted here, especially since everything else was so polished. The soundtrack rocks and is available as a standalone purchase. It's really one of the highlights of Monster Train. All the tracks have an epic feeling, with rising strings and thrumming bass notes. The cries of certain boss fights crash through and become an energising cacophony of action. The tracks vary in feeling and tone, but maintain their quality across the album. Overall, it adds a deep sense of polish to the sound design and the game as a whole. Monster Train ships with a few multiplayer options. Daily challenges where players complete the same run to compare high scores, custom challenges where you can design your own puzzle of cards and modifiers, and Hell Rush mode. Hell Rush mode is where players race against each other and the clock to reignite the frozen heart. Players all get the same randomly generated deck and game board. Highest score wins, but if you run out of time for a particular zone, the combat goes into auto mode, which will stop you playing any more cards and accelerate the encounter. It will catch you out if you haven't prepared for it. Matchmaking is lightning fast, and the interface is clean. It's a bit of multiplayer fun to an otherwise fundamentally single-player experience. Covenants and achievement-gated content add a lot of replayability to the Monster Train experience. However, it hasn't shipped with Steam Workshop support. The format really suits user-generated content, and the Workshop support in Slay the Spire added hundreds of hours of gameplay to their game. The releases that don't offer mod support are often aiming for a paid DLC model. I'm interested to see if Shiny Shoe releases Steam Workshop or paid DLC clans in the future. Overall, nearly everything about Monster Train feels like a tighter, trimmer version of Slay the Spire. It gains some flash and speed, and the new mechanics are brilliant additions. It loses a little depth and player agency as it cuts corners necessary to present so slick. The current lack of mod support hurts its long-term replayability, which may make Slay the Spire a better first buy for players new to the genre. Monster Train is available now on Steam for $22.50 US, £17.50 UK, and $32.35 Australian, or your regional equivalent. So, there you have it, the second review of my channel. Like last time, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Please leave any comments about anything you agree or disagree with below. I was really encouraged by the positive engagement to my first review. I plan to release more reviews in the future. Link in the description to my Twitch. I've been streaming semi-regularly at the moment.